father with a fresh start in a new country and a picture-perfect American dream. Until one night, a single 911 call shatters it all. This is the story of Jason Corbett, a man whose life ended in violence so brutal it sparked an international firestorm of secrets, lies, and 2 trials that left the world asking, what really happened that night? Here's what we think we know. Jason was an Irish businessman who moved to North Carolina for a second chance at happiness. He married his children's nanny, Molly Martens. They had a beautiful home, a seemingly happy life. But on August 2, 2015, police arrived to find Jason's skull crushed by a baseball bat and a paving stone. His wife and her father claimed self-defense. But the evidence? The evidence told a very different story. Now, hold on, because this isn't just another true crime tragedy. This case has everything. A Hollywood-worthy courtroom drama, a verdict overturned in a shocking twist, and a family feud spanning 2 continents. Friends turned on each other. Experts disagreed. And the truth? It's buried under layers of conflicting testimony, missing evidence, and a question that still haunts everyone who hears this story. Was Jason Corbett a victim of cold-blooded murder, or a man whose darkest secrets died with him? Stick around, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about justice, revenge, and how easily the truth can slip through the cracks. Before the headlines, the trials, and the storm of controversy, Jason Corbett was just a regular guy from Limerick, Ireland. Born in 1973, he grew up in a tight-knit community, worked hard, and had built a career as a devoted father and a successful executive at a packaging company. His life revolved around his wife, Margaret, known to friends as Mags, and their 2 young children, Jack and Sarah. By all accounts, they were happy. The kind of family you'd see laughing at a weekend soccer match or sharing stories over a pint at the local pub. But in 2006, tragedy struck. Mags, who'd battled asthma her whole life, suffered a fatal attack in her sleep. Jason woke up to find the love of his life gone. Friends described him as broken, a man who'd lost his compass overnight. For years, he threw himself into raising Jack and Sarah alone, clinging to routine to numb the grief. But raising 2 kids as a single father in Ireland wasn't easy. So in 2008, he made a decision that would change everything. He hired an American nanny named Molly Martens. Molly wasn't just any caregiver. She was ambitious, charismatic, and according to some, calculated. Within months, she'd not only won the trust of Jason's children, but also his heart. And by 2011, they were married, and Jason made the life-altering choice to leave Ireland behind for a fresh start in Davidson County, North Carolina. A sprawling house, a quiet suburban street, a new job, and on paper, it was the perfect reset. But here's the thing about fresh starts. They don't erase the past. Jason's family back in Ireland grew uneasy. Friends whispered that Molly was isolating him, even pushing to adopt the kids herself. And Jason? Those who knew him say he became more withdrawn, more secretive. Was it guilt, fear, or something darker? Because here's what we do know. The man who moved to America wasn't the same man who'd left Ireland. And in that quiet North Carolina home, the stage was set for a horror story no one saw coming. So, Jason and Molly start their new life in America. On the surface, it's idyllic. A big house in North Carolina, kids enrolled in school, backyard barbecues with neighbors. But behind those picket fences, cracks began to form. And fast. First, the marriage moved at lightning speed. Molly wasn't just a nanny anymore. She was Jason's wife, the stepmother to his children, and suddenly the center of his universe. But friends noticed something's off. Jason stopped calling home to Ireland as often. When he did, he downplayed Molly's temper, her explosive arguments over tiny things, like the kids forgetting to make their beds or Jason working late. One childhood friend put it bluntly. It was he was walking on eggshells in his own home. Then came the custody battle. Molly wanted to adopt Jack and Sarah, but Jason's family in Ireland fought back. They claimed Molly was erasing their mother, Mag's, memory, even banning the kids from speaking about her. Jason's sister, Tracy, later testified that Molly would scream, "I'm their mother now," during heated calls. But here's where it gets murky. Molly's side argued Jason was controlling, cutting her off from friends, monitoring her phone, even hiding her passport. But who is telling the truth here? The answer depends on who you ask. Neighbors in North Carolina saw a charming couple. But Jason's co-workers noticed bruises on his arms, which he brushed off as a roughhousing with the kids. Meanwhile, Molly's father, Tom Martens, a retired FBI agent, started visiting more often. He'd later tell the police he feared for Molly's safety. But was that a concern or a rehearsed alibi? By 2015, the tension was a powder keg. Jason was making plans to move back to Ireland with the kids, and Molly was desperate to stop him. And in that pressure cooker of fear, resentment, and secrets, one spark would change everything. August 2nd, 2015, 3:14 a.m. A 911 operator in Davidson County, North Carolina, answers a call. On the line, Molly Martens, her voice trebling, screaming that her husband is trying to kill us. Police rage to the scene, and what they find inside that house isn't just a crime scene. It's a nightmare. Jason Corbett's body lies on the bedroom floor, his skull shattered. Blood sprays the walls, the ceiling, even the door frame. And the weapons? A Louisville Slugger baseball bat and a heavy paving stone from the backyard. Molly and her father, Tom Martens, are standing in the hallway, their hands stained. They claim self-defense. Tom, a retired FBI agent, tells officers Jason was choking Molly, that he had to step in. Molly sobs, insisting Jason had threatened to kill her and the kids. But here's the problem: the evidence doesn't add up. First, the sheer brutality. The autopsy reveals Jason suffered 12 separate blows to the head, his arms covered in defensive wounds. This wasn't a struggle, it was an onslaught. Second, the kids. Jack and Sarah were asleep upstairs. They heard nothing. No screams, no crashes, just silence. And third, the timeline. Molly's 911 call lasted 8 minutes. In the background, you can hear Tom calmly saying he's still breathing. Then, a thud. Prosecutors would later argue that thud was the final, fatal blow, delivered after Jason was already unconscious. Okay, let's pause here. Imagine you're the detective walking into that room. Two stories collide. Molly and Tom insist they're victims. The bloodstains tell a different tale. A trail showing Jason was attacked first in their bedroom, then dragged into the hallway while still alive. The baseball bat covered in Tom's fingerprints had been wiped clean of Jason's DNA. And the paving stone? It wasn't even kept in the house. Someone carried it inside. Also, there was the question everyone asked: where were the kids? Molly claimed Jason was raging that night, yet Jack and Sarah slept through it all. No broken doors, no overturned furniture, just a father dead, a bat, and a stone soaked in blood, and a story that felt scripted. By sunrise, Molly and Tom Martens were in handcuffs, but this was just the beginning. because as investigators dug deeper, they realized nothing about this case is what it seemed. In the days after Jason's death, detectives faced two widely different stories. On one side, Molly and Tom Martens, a grieving wife and her retired FBI agent father, claiming they acted in self-defense to stop a violent, drunken Jason. On the other side, a mountain of forensic evidence that suggested something far more calculated. So, who was lying? Let's start with the prosecution's case. The autopsy was damning. Jason suffered 12 distinct blows to the head, some delivered with such force his skull fractured into pieces. Defensive wounds covered his arms and hands, proving he'd fought desperately for his life. Blood spatter analysis revealed he'd been struck first in the bedroom, then dragged into the hallway while still alive, while the attack continued. And the weapons? The baseball bat belonged to the kids, but the paving stone? It came from the backyard. Prosecutors argued this wasn't a heat-of-the-moment struggle, it was a planned assault. Why? Because the stone had to be carried upstairs, meaning someone had the time to think, to act with intent. But the defense fought back hard. They painted Jason as a monster, a manipulative alcoholic who'd physically and emotionally abused Molly for years. They cited neighbors who'd heard arguments, texts where Molly confided in friends about Jason's rage, and medical records showing she'd sought treatment for anxiety. And most crucially, they claimed Jason had threatened to kill Molly that night. And Tom, a protective father, had no choice but to intervene. Here's where things get messy. No prior police reports documented abuse. Jason's co-workers and Irish family swore he was a gentle man and never violent. Even the children, Jack and Sarah, denied ever witnessing aggression. And the blood spatter evidence, the defense hired their own expert, who disputed the prosecution's timeline, suggesting Jason could have been the initial aggressor. And the biggest hole in the case? The kids' testimony was never heard in the first trial. Their statements that they'd slept through the entire attack, that Molly had been acting weird earlier that night, were deemed inadmissible. Without their voice, the trial became a he said, she said battle, with jurors forced to weigh forensic against emotion. By the time the investigation closed, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a murder case, it was a showdown between science and story, truth and perception. And when the trial began, the world would finally see which side would crack under pressure. In 2017, 2 years after Jason's death, the trial of Molly and Tom Martens began. A courtroom battle so explosive it felt ripped from a Hollywood thriller. Prosecutors vowed to prove the murder, and the defense, they painted Jason Corbett as the villain of his own story, and the world watched, gripped by every twist. The prosecution's case hinged on brutality. They showed jurors photos of Jason's shattered skull, the blood-soaked walls, and the baseball bat wiped clean of his DNA. A forensic pathologist testified that the sheer number of blows, 12 to the head alone, made self-defense implausible. This was rage, the prosecutor declared. This was overkill. Then came the 911 call. As the tape played, jurors heard Molly's screams. But the defense fought back with the character assassination. Molly took the stand, tearfully describing years of alleged abuse, Jason's drinking, his threats, the night he allegedly pinned her down and snarled, "I'll kill you," and make it look like an accident. Tom, stoic and rehearsed, claimed Jason had Molly in a chokehold, forcing him to act. And then a bombshell. A neighbor testified that Jason once drunkenly yelled, "I'll bury you," during a fight. For the jury, it became a battle of who to believe. Jason's family sat in front row, clutching photos of Mags and the kids, while Molly's supporters framed her as a victim of systematic abuse. After 15 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. Molly and Tom were sentenced to 20 to 25 years in prison. Jason's family wept with relief, calling it justice for a man who'd been murdered twice, first in his body, then in reputation. But the story didn't end there. In 2021, an appeal court overturned the convictions, citing mishandled evidence. The blood spatter expert's credentials were questioned. Key witness testimony was thrown out, and just like that, Molly and Tom were granted a retrial, a second chance to rewrite the narrative. The world erupted. In Ireland, Jason's sister Tracy called it a betrayal. In the US, true crime forums lit up with debates. Had the system failed, or had the truth finally surfaced? One thing was certain: this wasn't over, because in 2023, the retrial would force everyone to relive the horror and decide, once and for all, who the real victim was. In 2023, 8 years after Jason Corbett's death, the case took a jaw-dropping turn. Molly and Tom Martens walked into a North Carolina courtroom one last time, but not as defendants fighting for their freedom, but as negotiators. Prosecutors, wary of another drawn-out trial, offered a plea deal: voluntary manslaughter, no murder charges, no life sentences, just a guilty plea, and time served. But here's what the deal actually meant. Molly and Tom admitted to killing Jason, but claimed it was the heat of passion act. They walked free that day, their 44 months in prison deemed punishment enough. For Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, now teenagers, it was a nightmare rebooted. After years in foster care, a bitter custody battle had finally returned them to Ireland to live with Tracy's family. And their statement? Just 4 words: we want to forget. But the most chilling question remains. If Molly and Tom were truly innocent, why take a plea deal at all? And if they were guilty, why did the system let them go? The answers depend on who you ask, because in this story there are no winners, only secrets, scars, and a truth that's still just out of reach. Now, I want to hear from you. What's your verdict? Was it self-defense or cold-blooded murder? Could the truth still be out there? I don't know, drop your theories in the comments and let's keep this conversation alive. If you're as hooked on this mystery as I am, smash that like button. It helps others find my videos. And also subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss our deep dives into world's most baffling cases.